that child should still be alive, but the open border policies that Biden and Harris have put in place are causing misery and suffering and death every day. I spent a lot of time at the southern border. The same is not true for the president. The same is not true for the vice president. If you come down to the Rio Grande Valley, as John Cornyn and Lindsey Graham have many, many times, within minutes you see the human suffering that has unfolded. You see Texas farmers and ranchers showing you photograph after photograph of dead bodies of migrants they find that the traffickers have abandoned on their properties. A few weeks ago in Senate Judiciary Committee, Alejandro Mayorkas was testifying. I asked him, how many migrants died crossing the border illegally last year? He said, I don't know, I have no idea. Remember that the next time he tells you how compassionate he is. He doesn't even bother to know how many people his policies are killing. The answer is 853. I can tell you when we were down there, John and I together brought 19 senators down to the border. We were out on the Rio Grande. We saw a dead body, a man floating in the water who had drowned crossing illegally. I've seen women who've been violently raped by the cartels. I've seen children, little girls, little boys, horribly physically assaulted, sexually assaulted. What is happening is evil. And it's the result of deliberate political decisions. And now, next week, the Biden administration is going to lift Title 42, and here's their great plan. They're going to make it worse. They don't intend to fix it. They don't intend to stop it. They don't intend to shut down the cartels. They don't intend to secure the borders. They don't intend to stop the drug traffickers. They intend to make it worse. They want 6 million to become 10 million, to become 12 million, to become 15 million. And their actions demonstrate they don't give a damn about the lives that will be lost in the process. They don't care about the children assaulted in the process. They don't care about the drugs that are killing our children in this country. Nobody who looks at what's happening can defend it because it's indefensible.
Yes.
Senator Graham, where are you on the administration sending troops to the border? We heard from Senator Cornyn.
I think it's ridiculous theater. It will not change the outcome. They're not going to be there as soldiers turning people around. They're not going to be enforcing laws because of the Posse Comitatus Act. They're going to allow the Border Patrol to do more administrative work to process these people. They're not doing anything to deter the entry to the country. So it is political theater. It doesn't change the dynamic. I think what Senator Cruz said is, it comes a point in time, this is really deliberate. 60,000 people have been granted parole under this administration. That's a process under U.S. law that's meant to be used judiciously, where you have a review, there's a certain situation that would allow the person, they got to appear in court, they got a family member dying. I think during the Trump years, maybe 10 or 12 people granted parole, 60,000. So what am I going to do next? Well, these gentlemen from Texas, senators, were explaining to the country that next week's going to be a bad week and you could avoid it if you chose to. The 1,500 soldiers are not going to do a damn thing. But I intend to disclose and uncover, I think, a conscious abuse of the law to allow people in through a process that I don't think the law ever intended. So I think Exhibit A as to whether or not this administration wants to get as many people in the country as they can is going to be how they abuse the parole system. I feel that Donald Trump did the best job in my political lifetime. When Donald Trump did something, it worked. Everything he did, as Ted suggested, worked. The Triangle Agreement, where the three Northern Triangle countries, where they would process asylum claims, took the problem off the table. You had the lowest illegal crossings in December of 2020, as Senator Cruz said, in 45 years. So I would suggest that if you want to compare the Trump performance on the border to Biden, it's an easy comparison to make. What am I urging the Biden administration to do? Because Trump did it doesn't mean you can't do it. Your country is being destroyed by illegal immigration. Your own democratic cities are being overwhelmed. As Ted and John have talked about, the human misery is beyond one's imagination. You can literally repeat what Trump did to gain control over the situation if you chose to. Now, why can't they do that? Because the radical left owns this administration. The parole policies are being pushed by people who want everybody in the world to come here. The change in border policy was driven by a group of people on the left of the Democratic Party that believes we should have open borders. And if you don't get that by now, you have missed a lot.
Let me add something on that. Look, sending troops to the border can have an enormous positive effect. There's no doubt boots on the ground matter, whether it is military troops, whether it is National Guard, whether it is Texas DPS officers, whether it's Border Patrol agents. Boots on the ground are an important part of how you secure the border. However, under Joe Biden, the 1,500 troops he's sending will accomplish nothing to secure the border, and they're not designed to, and here's why. The troops on the border are beneficial if you have a policy that when you apprehend someone, you deport them. Then the troops on the border are helpful for apprehending people coming across. As long as the Biden administration keeps in place catch and release, he could send 1,500 troops, he could send 10,000 troops, he could send 100,000 troops. It would do nothing to secure the border. Why? Because every illegal immigrant they encounter, they would hand over to the Biden administration, and the Biden administration would let them go. Actually, more than let them go, would put them on a plane or put them on a bus and take them to whatever city in America they want to go to. Joe Biden is the last mile of the human trafficking network. And to understand just how horrific it is, I'd encourage you to go back to Alejandro Mayorkas' testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, which all three of us vigorously questioned him at the time. And there was one moment in that questioning when I put up a poster board, and it had a series of pictures of colored wristbands. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Secretary, what are these colored wristbands? And his answer, he said, I don't know, I have no idea. I got to admit, that answer actually surprised me. Very little he said in that hearing surprised me. That answer astonished me. And my response to him, I said, Mr. Secretary, you have just told the American people that you are utterly incompetent at your job and you do not even care about doing it. Why? Because just about every illegal immigrant who crosses the border has one of those colored wristbands around their wrist. If you stand on the banks of the Rio Grande, as I have, as Lindsay has, as John has, you'll see hundreds, you'll see thousands of colored wristbands in the grass. For him to say he didn't know what they are tells me he's never stood on the banks of the Rio Grande. He's never even bothered to ask the Border Patrol agents, hey, what's going on here? The colors on the wristband correspond to how many thousands of dollars the illegal immigrants owe the cartels. Virtually all of them come in massive debt to the cartels. And the color coding, look, for the cartels, these are not human beings, these are cargo. That's how they treat them. And you have teenage boys who come in, they owe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to the cartels. The Biden administration sends them to your city, wherever your city is, they send them there. And those teenage boys are working for the drug cartels, and they have to work for the drug cartels because they'll murder their families back home if they don't. So every city in America is getting an influx of criminals working for the drug cartels, courtesy of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I'll tell you, as bad as it is for the boys, the girls have it a lot worse. There are thousands upon thousands of girls in sex slavery right now, in forced prostitution. I look at those wristbands as modern-day leg irons. And for the Secretary of Homeland Security to say, I don't even know what they are, tells you that he has not spent one day going into the office saying, I'm going to do my job today. Tell me what's happening at the border and how we stop it. He's not trying to stop it. The administration rather is trying to accelerate it and create even more illegal immigration.
One last question. Yeah.
I wanted to clarify what type of substitute authority you guys were looking for, because the Biden administration is reinstating expedited removal. Why is that insufficient? Some people say that.
Well, you know, all I can tell you is that we went from the lowest illegal crossings to the highest on record. They're talking about setting up processing centers inside Mexico and other countries, which is a good idea. Remaining Mexico worked. People are not going to pay a cartel $10,000 to sit in Mexico for 5 or 10 years. That's why it went to a trickle. The exceptions they have consume the rule itself. Unaccompanied minors they don't have to comply with this. The rebuttable presumption, you can still show up at the border and be processed. So the bottom line here is that the processes that we know work were repealed for a political reason. Title 42 ends May the 11th, and we're here begging the administration, it is in your power to adequately substitute Title 42 authority. You have done nothing from my point of view, and Ted knows this better than anybody, to provide an adequate substitute. So the reason 10,000 people in one city have gathered waiting for May the 12th is because they don't see an adequate substitute. People voting with their feet on the ground tell you they don't see anything replacing Title 42 they're concerned about. These surges would not be existing if they had found a way to replace Title 42 and communicate it to people. You're wasting your time and your money. So the fact that the surge is coming tells me they have made no corrective action, and Senator Cruz and I would gladly sit down with the administration and give them ideas about what they could do to stop the surge, but there's been no interest in their part. And
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.